Good afternoon. It is Friday afternoon, and welcome to more Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We will get to some talk about the Browns and that coaching staff that they're putting together out in Berea. But first, we're going to talk some Indians. Tribe Fest is coming to the Cleveland Convention Center downtown, a chance for fans to interact with the Indians players and front office. That's the news that we're going to touch on first. And joining us live from our cleveland.com studios downtown Cleveland, Joe Noga. Joe, appreciate the time. What about this year's Tribe Fest? I know you've been kind of previewing it. What's going on this weekend?
Well, I mean, ever since they moved the event to the Huntington Convention Center downtown, they really blew it out. The Indians did a heck of a job last year. They put a 90 by 90 turf diamond in there and let the kids play ball with the Indians. You know, you're catching batting practice from Corey Kluber and hitting dingers with Jose Ramirez. How can you go wrong? Yeah, a great job by the Indians to allow their players to connect with the fans, especially the younger fans down at the convention and Convention Center and Visitors Bureau downtown. Joe, let's talk a little bit about the Indians, the roster makeup as it stands. A lot of veteran players left, particularly position players. New guys added, much younger. They've kept the pitching staff intact. But when you look at it, it's a challenged offensive lineup at this point. Yeah, a lot of the questions that you have looking at the roster are, where the run's going to come from, where is the production going to come from. The top of the lineup is great. Jose Ramirez and Francisco Lindor, great combination, going to drive in a lot of runs, going to score a lot of runs again this year. But, after those first 3 or 4 spots, after Carlos Santana and potentially Jake Bauers, one of the new acquisitions, things are going to drop off pretty significantly. You lose an Edwin Encarnacion, a Yonder Alonso. That's almost 200 RBIs there, and the OPS for both of those players was not great, but it was enough to propel the offense to another division championship. I think they're not done, and that's everything that Chris Antonetti has been saying all along throughout this offseason is they still have work to do. And Terry Francona's message recently when he was talking at a press conference for a charity golf outing he was going to, he said, at some point at the end of spring training, they're going to break camp with 25 guys. They'll put together a roster. They'll have guys coming out of spring training to fill things out. I'm not sure that he even knows right now what that's going to look like.
And again, lost a lot of veteran players. It looks like they're trying to get younger is what it is. You see the guys that they have lost. This is just a free agency. In addition, they traded Edwin Encarnacion. They traded Yan Gomes. Those guys are guys that, as the roster is currently constructed, would be, with Encarnacion, the 4-hitter, Gomes is probably the 5 or 6 hitter based on what they have offensively. The challenge is if you don't add the offense, Jose Ramirez and Francisco Lindor are never going to see a decent pitch to hit.
Yeah, and that's a concern. I think that puts a lot of pressure on a Carlos Santana coming back to the team to produce. And we all know that early in the season is not something that Carlos Santana really does. Until the weather starts to warm up a little bit, he doesn't really hit his stride. I think the other thing you don't want to overlook in all those takeaways from the roster, particularly Michael Brantley, is the leadership aspect in the clubhouse. This team is going to be looking pretty early on for a new voice and a new leader in that clubhouse. Is it going to be Francisco Lindor? Is it going to be Jose Ramirez, who's an outspoken guy, but not necessarily a guy who has that leadership role on himself right now? Somebody's got to step forward and lead this team, and right now that's another question that's really hanging out there for us to find out.
And as we say that, the pitching situation is outstanding. The starters 1 through 5 are as good as it gets, and Las Vegas tends to agree. The projected win totals for the Indians, 91.5, 5th best in all of baseball. As the roster is currently constructed offensively, I just don't see it. I mean, I see a lot of games being 3-2, 4-3, going the opposite way. And in part, the other thing that the Indians have to do, they have to find some bullpen guys that can save the starters from having to go 7-8 innings every start.
Right, you're still looking for that bridge guy to set up your 7, 8, 9 innings with Brad Hand at the back of the bullpen. They're pretty much set there, but without a Cody Allen or and there are available bullpen arms out there that they haven't gone and gotten yet. Maybe they're waiting for the market to come down a little bit, but there's names that are being invited to spring training and names on the roster. Guys that they've acquired in trades, particularly like a Jeffrey Ramirez. These are guys that don't necessarily jump off the page, but they're going to have somebody step forward and fill those roles if they don't go out and acquire somebody between now and spring training.
Joe Noga, we appreciate the time very much. I'm sure we'll be checking back in with you to see, are they moving? Are you hearing anything? Again, the rumors continue to persist about trading either Bauer or Kluber, and that would be the type of move that would bolster that offense pretty significantly.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that's sort of hanging out there is, are they going to make that move with one of their starters, now or sometime early in the season if things are not shaping up the way they need them to be offensively. That's the one thing they can use to go out and get a bat is, their depth at starting pitching.
Joe Noga, appreciate the time. Thanks very much. Joe Noga, one of the Indians beat reporters, checking in from our cleveland.com studios. Well, we all know the Browns are assembling a new coaching staff. Dan Lobby, cleveland.com's Browns beat reporter, will join us in studio. We'll talk Freddie Kitchens and more here on More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I had bad credit, so I wasn't able to get a bank account or a credit card.
My life is so busy, I don't have time to be standing in line to cash a check.
That's why we created the Netsband Prepaid MasterCard. It puts you in control of managing your money.
I can get my money up to 2 days earlier than everybody else. I don't have to wait till the end of the week to get paid.
Order now at no cost and get paid up to 2 days faster.
Call 1-800-644-0772.
Call now and you can choose your card design.
I thought this was going to come up, but it didn't come up, and I want to address it. All right? I've not been offered any head coaching jobs. All right?
Freddie Kitchens, Browns' new head coach, along with Dan Lobby. I'm Dave Bacon. Let's get a little bit of perspective there. That was in his press conference when he was named offensive coordinator, following Greg Williams' press conference where he said he had been named to or offered 11 head coaching positions. So a little bit of the personality of Freddie Kitchens coming out just like that.
Yeah, right after Greg Williams had said he'd been offered jobs, some of them that he didn't even have to go into interview for. So Freddie Kitchens had a little fun with that. And then, you know, about a month and a half later, he was taking real questions about whether he wanted to be a head coach. And now here we are. He is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
Dan Lobby, the Browns beat reporter from cleveland.com. Appreciate the time here in studio. Are you surprised by Freddie Kitchens? I know when we talked to you last week, you said he was a legitimate candidate. Well, he was clearly one of the front runners.
Yeah, I've always felt like he was going to be a real candidate for this job. Now, the fact that it actually happens, that takes you a little bit by surprise, because you kind of think, okay, he could be a candidate. They could hire him, but, you know, come on, they're going to find somebody else. And they decided to go with Freddie. So that part was a little surprising, but I'm not really surprised that we ended up here, because I always thought he was a legitimate candidate, really kind of starting around December as this offense was going really well.
It clearly sends a message that the Browns are happy with the development of Baker Mayfield. And Kitchens is a guy, you know, a lot of people make a lot of the fact that he hasn't been a coordinator, he hasn't called plays except for the 8 games. He has some pretty significant coaching influences.
Yeah.
He is coached on the staffs of some of the best of the best, the brightest. You see Saban, Parcells, Bruce Arians. So he's been around guys that know how to do this a little bit.
He really has. And, you know, he's been a quarterback's coach. He was a quarterback's coach with Carson Palmer, who had one of his best seasons as a pro. So he's got a resume. You know, I kind of looked back at Andy Reid's resume. He's got a similar resume to a guy like that who didn't really call plays, but then he came on to Philadelphia, did a good job there. Kitchens at least has those 8 games calling plays as a coordinator. So he's got that resume that you kind of look for without necessarily that coordinator box checked for very long.
And he's going to be able to name his own staff. The Browns have released a number of their coordinators, their coaches. So as you look at it, what do you think it was about Freddie Kitchens that really enamored John Dorsey? What is it that made him the guy?
I think obviously it was that relationship with Baker Mayfield. That was the big thing. This is a guy that Baker obviously likes. And I think Baker's a guy that, you know, he's kind of a ride or die type of guy. He's going to really like you and attach himself to you. Or, as we saw with Hugh Jackson, he's going to remember if he feels slighted. So I think that relationship with Baker was big, but also just the personality. I think he can control a room. Now, we don't know how he can handle the discipline aspect and some things like that, but I do think he related to players across that locker room, you know, in all phases. So I think that's part of it. And obviously, he went into that interview and he impressed John Dorsey with his vision for the team. So I think it was a lot of those things, but really it comes down to Baker Mayfield and running this offense.
The thing that you have to feel somewhat good about is John Dorsey knows what a winning environment is. Having said that, it's going to be hugely important that you get a defensive guy that can basically take over the defense. And you don't want Freddie Kitchens to have to micromanage any facet of this.
Yeah, and, you know, I remember back when Mike Pettin was going into his second year, one of the things he said is, I'm going to get more involved in the offense. And we all kind of thought, really? Yeah, that's not really your specialty. You want to let Freddie Kitchens, even though he's the head coach, the face of the organization, has to run 53 guys, not just his side of the room. You don't want him to have to worry about the nuances of a defensive game plan. He'll help out. He'll probably have his hand in that stuff. He'll learn about those things as he goes along, but his specialty is offense, and that's okay. You can be an offensive specialist and a head coach, but like you said, you got to have a strong defensive presence in that other side of the coaching staff.
And there are a number of guys that are available as defensive coordinators that the Browns are talking to or will talk to, coupled with head coach. Do you think having head coaching experience on that level helps?
I think it does, because you're sort of going to be another head coach. And also you're going to understand what Kitchens is dealing with. You're going to understand what he's going through as a first-time head coach, as a guy that, you know, hasn't run a franchise like this before. And the other thing, too, is some of these names, a guy like a Chuck Pagano, right? He's a guy who has been a head coach before, and maybe he has aspirations to get back to being a head coach, but I don't think he's going to come in and try and undermine Kitchens and try and take that job from him or anything like that. That's sort of what you want, a guy that's been in that seat before, but also understands what it takes to stay out of the way a little bit.
And another guy to add to that list, Jim Haslett, former coach of the Saints, just released down south yesterday by the Cincinnati Bengals. So he was their linebacker coach. Familiar with the division, has had some success. Are those kind of the boxes that you're checking with the DC?
I think you do like having a familiarity with the division. I think that's important. But at the same time, you want a guy that's going to come in and take advantage of the talent they have. You've got, you know, a possibly elite edge rusher, a guy that really took big steps. You've got a pretty good middle linebacker in Joe Schobert. You've got a potential shutdown corner in Denzel Ward. you've got 3 big building blocks. So I think any defensive coordinator would want to come in and work with those guys and build around the talent the Browns have here already.
Offensive coordinator, a little bit of a different nuance because, in theory, you want Freddie Kitchens to continue to call the plays. Yeah. He showed that he's pretty good. Now, there are some interesting names available from the offensive coordinator side of things that the Browns are interested in talking to.
Yeah, and, that's the big thing. Freddie Kitchens has to call the plays. I know there's people out there that might be a little nervous about that, rightfully so. It can be hard for a first-time head coach, but that's why he got the job, is his play calling. The other part of it, though, is he's got to have that. He's got to control his ego a little bit, where if the offense is struggling, he's got to be willing to say, like an Andy Reid, you know what, I'm going to let this guy handle the play calling here for the next month or so because it is too much for me. But, you're looking at Todd Monken. That's an interesting name. Jim Bob Cooter from the Lions, who worked with Matthew Stafford and built that offense around Matthew Stafford. That's an interesting name as well. The question is going to be, are they going to be willing to come in and take a little bit of a back seat, do more of the game planning, not necessarily get to call those plays on Sundays, but do a lot of the work during the week?
Are you looking for a guy that has been around a little bit? I mean, Monken is in his 50s, so he's another guy that interviewed for a couple of head coaching jobs and impressed. Mm-hmm. I think probably on the offensive side of the ball, if you get a guy that views this as a stepping stone, it's not a bad thing because Kitchens is the offensive mind you want to keep.
Yeah, exactly. And I think ultimately, look, if this works with Freddie Kitchens, maybe your offensive coordinator in the future is an Eric Bieniemy type, a guy who's younger, up and coming, trying to get that head coaching job, or a Matt Nagy type. I keep referring back to Kansas City because that has been such a model for franchises, I think. But eventually that'll be your model. But right now, I think it's okay to have a more experienced guy and a guy that's been there, as long as he's willing to say, I don't have to call plays, I don't have to be the guy in the quarterback's ear on Sundays, I'm willing to let Freddie Kitchens handle that.
The Browns took a while to announce Kitchens. Has that surprised you? Is it anything to be concerned about?
I don't think it's anything to be concerned about right now. I think it's just some contractual details that they need to work out. I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe it could be an option year, maybe it could be something like that, but I think they're still working out contractual details. But as long as we're hearing coordinators' names being thrown out there, and as long as we're hearing Freddie Kitchens trying to find coordinators and that's not stalling, I think that's a good sign. Eventually, we're going to have a press conference and Freddie Kitchens will be introduced as the head coach.
Well, right now we're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Dan's going to stick around. We'll talk a little bit about rosters and some of the things going on with some of the players. You're watching More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition here on cleveland.com. We'll be right back with more Browns talk.
Your basement is damp, dirty, and not somewhere you want to spend time. Let Nature's Stone Flooring transform your basement into a true extension of your home. Nature's Stone's proprietary hydrostatic ports allow water to simply evaporate, so no mold or mildew. Plus, it has a higher insulation rating than carpet and is warmer than linoleum, vinyl, wood, or tile.
Schedule your free in-home estimate easily online today and get up to 50% off.
Nature's Stone is the affordable basement floor solution that beautifies your home. Nature's Stone, the only concrete solution.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
More sports and Les Levine. The weekend winners edition rolls on. I'm Dave Bacon, and pleased to be joined by Dan Lobby for segment number 2 here on our Browns coverage on the weekend winners edition. And Dan, the roster, huge upgrade this season under John Dorsey, and some news. Joel Bitonio, well-earned trip to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, one of the really good guys in that locker room. We actually voted him the good guy for the second year in a row. He's great when he talks to us, and one of the leaders in that room. He was a captain, and the interior of that line this year. There were questions on the outside with Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard, who got better as the year went on, but the interior was always solid with him, Kevin Zeitler, J.C. Treader. Really, you can make a case for all three of those guys to go to the Pro Bowl, especially Zeitler, but Joel Bitonio, certainly a well-deserved honor for him.
Now, one of the things, I thought the defense was going to be significantly better. Early in the year, it showed some signs. They were taking the ball away. Offense wasn't able to score. But I think as the season wore on, a little bit disappointing in the way that performed, because they do have some really good pieces.
Yeah, and I think you could tell the difference when Joe Schobert was hurt. I was a guy that last year with Joe Schobert, I thought, okay, this guy just made a bunch of tackles. I thought this year he took big steps forward and was a real impact player, and you could tell when he wasn't out there. I think the pass rush, Myles Garrett was dealing with a lot of double teams. Guys were kind of running him by the play. I think he could use some help in that pass rush. I think that was a big part of it. And in the secondary, a credit to a guy like TJ Carey, who was versatile, played inside, played outside, wherever they needed him to play. But I still think there's room to improve that secondary as well. And when you're relying on takeaways, that can be a little bit of a fickle thing. Some weeks you're going to get a bunch, others you just might not. Some of it is luck, and I think they dealt with that as the takeaway number came down a little bit.
The other thing is, Denzel Ward concerned me. He would try to take on tight ends, and it's like, Denzel, you're a greyhound, you're a thoroughbred. You don't go and mess with plow horses. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a concern.
Well, and Greg Williams brought it up in training camp and took some criticism for it because of the way he phrased it, basically said stupid tackling. But really, we saw it again on the one concussion that he got before his season ended. We saw him go high on a guy, took a shot to the head. He's going to have to learn to adjust his tackling a little bit because he has a chance to be really good. But we also know what head injuries can do to guys, right, and how it could derail a career, and we don't want to see that happen, not just from a football perspective, but from a personal perspective. And I think Denzel Ward will get that stuff cleaned up because he has a chance to be really special.
Yeah, he is far too valuable for this team to be knocked out of it because he's not tackling the way he should be. Let's talk a little bit about positions. What do you address free agency? What do you address in the draft? What are some of the areas on this team, on this roster that, okay, if we get this, we can get to that next level that we're trying to get to?
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, the wide receiver position, and we're seeing that market begin to develop, right? Maybe Antonio Brown becomes available. I don't know if the Browns look at Antonio Brown. I'd at least kick the tires on it and see if you could bring him in at a decent cost. But, there's going to be some guys who become available via trade. I think that's an area that they address in free agency because draft wide receivers take so long to develop, and it's such a crapshoot with what you're going to get out of the draft at the wide receiver position. I think they probably look at the pass rush in the draft. Probably with that first-round pick, you might see an inside guy. I think they could use another edge rusher. I thought Emmanuel Ogbah was a little bit of a disappointment this year. They need more out of him, and they need to just continue to beef up that pass rush. Finding Chris Smith in free agency was a great find, but they need to find another legitimate pass rusher. That's what I think they'll target early in the draft.
What about linebacker? That's an area that's kind of intriguing. I mean, Kirksey was banged up middle of the year. Is that something you think you kind of address? I don't know, it's front line, but you definitely want some of the younger guys you can feed in.
Yeah, and you got a guy like Jannard Avery who's a little more, they played a little more at defensive end than at linebacker. I think it depends who the new coordinator is. If this is a guy that's going to be like Greg Williams and play linebackers a lot, he had at least 2 linebackers on the field for most plays last year, then yeah, you probably have to address that position. If you have a guy that's going to be in nickel, play maybe 6 defensive backs a lot. I mean, we saw the Chargers play 7 defensive backs against Lamar Jackson in that playoff game. I think it depends what sort of personnel this new defensive coordinator wants to deploy and how he kind of values the linebacker position. Is he more traditional? Is he going to go with more DBs? We kind of have to wait for that to play out. But I would certainly look at that position because I think you've got to move on from a guy like Jamie Collins if you can. You've got a chance to this offseason now. He gets a lot cheaper to move on from, and I think they have to explore that.
What about you? You don't have to look at the mock drafts or worry about the quarterbacks coming out. How nice is that you're not, rambling to find you finally found the franchise guy. You got it right.
It's great. You know, we're not sitting here talking about Dwayne Haskins. You know, you have to pick the Ohio State quarterback, or we're not talking about Kyler Murray as being 5'9" or whatever he is a problem, or is he going to go play baseball? We don't have to worry about all of that stuff. And the other thing, come draft night, the Browns aren't going to pick until what, like 9:30? I don't even know what the clock is on the 17th pick. It might be 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're going to be bored for a few hours.
Hey, you can come into work late that day.
Yeah, exactly. I'll sleep in a little bit.
Dan Labbe, we appreciate the time.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll have you back in as we see this coaching staff for Freddie Kitchens develop. We're going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll talk some playoff football. Hopefully the Browns are back in that next year. But coming up next, Fowler's 5, the 5 best picks from this weekend's playoff games in the NFL.
Smile. No matter how well you provide for your family today, if you don't have life insurance, their future may be at risk. Why not help guarantee those you love $250,000 or more with life insurance through AIG Direct? Less than $14 a month buys a 40-year-old man a $250,000 term life policy. That's up to 3 times what you can get from other companies for the same price. Make the future more secure for those you love.
Call 1-800-723-9758.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
It takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling to bring the heat when things get chilly. Find us at 440-449-HEAT.
Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We've reached that time in the show where we're going to talk some NFL playoff point spreads, legalized sports wagering. Just a couple hours away, both Pittsburgh and in West Virginia. So we are going to bring in our NFL point spread expert, Ryan Fowler from NFLPickWatch.com. Ryan, as always, we appreciate the time. The first game Saturday, the Chiefs at home, 5-point favorites against the Colts. How do you see this one?
Yeah, we talked last week. I mean, that Colts defense got good really quick. I think if you have followed the NFL in recent years or maybe played fantasy football, the Colts defense was one that you would attack. And NFL teams attacked it for many years, but they got really good overnight. And you saw what they did to Deshaun Watson and the Texans last weekend. I think the same thing happens this weekend in Kansas City. Yes, I know Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have a statue built for him before the end of January, right? Well, maybe not. I think that the Colts can get in there. They might not win outright, though. If I had to pick one team to win outright on the road this weekend, it would be the Colts. But I think they can do just enough to hang with this team. You have to remember the Chiefs' Achilles heel this year has been their defense. Their secondary is suspect. That allows T.Y. Hilton to make some plays. That allows Eric Ebron to make some plays. And then let's get to the rushing game, because I think with Andrew Luck and how well the Colts have played this year, Marlon Mack's impact on the Colts offense has been muted somewhat. He went off last weekend against the Texans. A good front seven, a good rush defense, and Marlon Mack had one of the best games of his career. So don't poo-poo that. Look at both sides of the ball. The Colts have balance on offense with T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron, and then the rushing game with Hines
and then Marlon Mack leading the way. They match up fine with the Chiefs. Yes, Mahomes is going to make some amazing throws. He might do it blindfolded. We don't know yet. But I think you have to take into consideration how well the Colts are playing right now. They go in there hot. And again, I think if this was earlier in the season with how well the Chiefs have been playing, this could have been a 7-8 point spread in favor of the Chiefs. The Colts are in the back of everybody's mind as a contender right now. That's why they're only dogs of 5 points. I like the Colts to cover the 5.
Well, the other thing that I would say about that, to illustrate your point, quarterbacks making their first playoff start, like Patrick Mahomes, 5-13 straight up since 2012. Let's move on to the Saturday night game, the 8:15 game, Rams -7 at home. And you see Dak Prescott not very good in road games. Jared Goff really good in home games. Who do you like in this one?
Well, yeah, and not to mention they get Todd Gurley back. Todd Gurley missed the last few weeks of the regular season with a knee injury. He was removed from the injury report. So let's just assume, even if that knee is bothering him a little bit, they remove him from the injury report. He's probably at 90-95% health this late in the season. I think that's why they gave him a little bit of rest at the end of the year. And Todd Gurley, he can catch out of the backfield. He can run between the tackles. He does it all for the Rams. But you were mentioning some stats, and here's a great one for you. The Cowboys averaged 7.5 fewer points on the road this year. So they were like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, home and away. When they go away from the Jerry Dome, 7.5 fewer points per game. On the flip side, you mentioned Jared Goff likes playing at home, 8.9 more points per game at home than on the road. So with that combination and thinking that you're getting Gurley back healthier than he was back in week 14 and 13 when they were kind of sputtering a bit. I mean, if you look back at the Rams regular season, there was that game against Nick Foles and the Eagles. They kind of got tripped up. Now they start to get clicking. And you have to also remember, too, one thing that I've mentioned on this show a couple weeks ago was you have these contenders. And when these contenders know that they're one of the elite teams, it's when they step on another team's neck and really blow them out. And that's what they did to the Cardinals, a team that had been down but competed in Seattle in week 17. The Rams blew them out. They blew out the 49ers. Granted, their defense gave up some points. But those final 2 weeks kind of gave me an idea that, you know, the Rams, they might not be perfect. You don't need to be perfect, especially when you're playing at home, especially with the way the Cowboys have struggled on the road this year. I'll take the Rams to cover the 7. It's a big number, but I like the Rams at home.
Well, you mentioned those elite teams. The early game Sunday features one of them in the New England Patriots, -4 at home. Take a look at what the Chargers have done. Their last 7 on the road. We'll add another thing to that. 9-1 against the spread in the last 10 where they don't, or where they board a plane. One of their home games right down the road against the Rams. They were on a bus. One of their home games, they had to fly to England to play in London. And you see New England 6-2 against the spread last 8 home playoff games. Tom Brady and the Patriots may not have been great this year, but usually they understand when playoff time comes.
Yeah, let's take one step back and go back to the Chargers, just looking at what they did in Baltimore last week. You mentioned it a minute ago. Rookie quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson. Again, that niche offense, it kind of reminded me of what Philadelphia and the Eagles went through with Chip Kelly a few years ago, where, oh, it's brand new. It's the Wildcat. It's Lamar Jackson running the RPO, the run-pass option. And the Chargers got to see it twice over 3 weeks. So they kind of adjusted, right? Plus, Lamar had the early turnover. So let's take nothing away from the Chargers. They played some great defense against a rookie quarterback, and they snuffed it out. They didn't do too much on offense, though. Yes, the Ravens have the second-best scoring defense in the league, but you needed to see a little bit more. And now they have to play another quote-unquote early game. You know, you could go to the well a lot of times, but when you give Bill Belichick and Tom Brady 2 weeks to prepare for a matchup, you kind of have to like the Patriots. Again, you look at this point spread. It's begging you to take the Patriots at 4, right? I mean, you only have to cover 4. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, they're not perfect. They haven't been for a long time. I think they kind of lost the step this year. But to cover 4 against a San Diego, there I go, San Diego, a Los Angeles Chargers team, after having to play last week, the boarding of planes, cross-country, early kickoff, things are lining up for the Patriots in this matchup. Their defense allows points. They allow yardage, but they don't allow points. They bend, they do not break. So I think in this type of setting where they get the home game, cold temperatures, going to be below 30 at Foxborough this weekend, I really like the Patriots to cover the 4. I actually think this could be a blowout, especially if Phillip Rivers makes a few mistakes, which he hasn't done this year. He makes a few on this weekend's game, and the Patriots cover the 4.
Patriots win a couple, and all of a sudden everybody forgets about the struggles they had during the regular season. Eagles and Saints, the largest spread of it, the Sunday afternoon game, the late game, Saints -8. Nick Foles, quarterback for the Eagles, 7-1-1 against the spread the last 9. New Orleans, 10-4 against the spread in their last 14, but 0-3 in their last 3. New Orleans just beat up the Eagles in Week 11 of the regular season. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, in that first matchup, it was Carson Wentz. So we have a variable change when we're looking at this matchup. You go from Carson Wentz, who might have been playing with a slightly fractured back. We're not completely sure on that. Nick Foles, again, the survive and advance mentality of him. Kudos to him. Granted, it came down to a Cody Parkey missed field goal on the reason it's the Eagles playing the Saints and not the Bears. So I guess you could kind of take that with a grain of salt of who should be playing the Saints in this matchup. But 8 points, a ton of points, right? Looking at the Saints, they did struggle down the stretch, but I think what they needed was, you know how you Control-Alt-Delete your computer to restart it and get things cooking again? I think that week off for the Saints was that Control-Alt-Delete. I think they needed to just reboot, get some rest, get off their feet, because at their best, they're 10, 12-point favorites over the Eagles in this matchup. The Eagles' offense is one-dimensional. It's going to be Nick Foles' arm because they don't really have a consistent running game. So then you can drop back and have Nick Foles beat you through the air. The Saints' defense isn't as good as it was last year, but I think at home, in the Dome, where they're one of the best teams again, and they score quick, I think this is just a matchup that is going to be too much for Foles to overcome. He's had a great run. The Super Bowl last year, he's won a playoff game this year and picked up where Carson Wentz left off. I just think they run out of gas. I think that one-dimensional offense trips them up in this. The Saints, they're going to score at will against the secondary that's a little beat up. I like the Saints to cover the big number at 8.
Okay, so here's where we come to the prop bet. Give us an extra one so we have that Fowler's 5 coming up for this week.
Yeah, I felt like I was shortchanging you the last 2 weeks. So let's talk about an anytime player touchdown. So there's every player's on the board for the Chiefs and Colts. Anybody in that game has a prop bet associated with it. But I like Eric Ebron. This is where fantasy football analysis intersects with gambling. Eric Ebron had 12 touchdowns during the regular season for the Indianapolis Colts. The Chiefs, in fantasy football terms, allowed the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. This makes so much sense. But the other thing you have to consider is we call it juice. So you have to risk $120 to win $100 if you want Marlon Mack, if you want Travis Kelce. But if you risk $100, you win $110 if you pick Eric Ebron. This seems to make the most sense. The Chiefs secondary is suspect. I love Eric Ebron in this matchup. He scored another touchdown last week. The Chiefs secondary is pretty weak compared to most secondaries in these playoffs. Eric Ebron gets in the end zone, you win $110.
We appreciate it. Ryan Fowler from NFLPickWatch.com. We will definitely be checking back in with you next week for some more NFL point spread picks. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We'll see you again next Friday afternoon right here on cleveland.com. Have a great week, everyone.
Keep it simple.
Leaders lead. Leaders lead.
Let's go! Stop whining!
Again, go again, yes! You gotta rotate, go, Stokes!
The High School Sports Insider is brought to you by Cuyahoga Community College, where futures begin. By the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. By Spectrum News 1, always Ohio, always refreshing, always on, exclusively on Spectrum. By Dominion East Ohio, Dominion, it all starts here. And by Classic Teleproductions.
It's the middle of January and we know 2 things. The snow and cold weather are here to stay, and inside things will heat up as the winter sports hit their full stride. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the High School Sports Insider. Along with Bill Castrovince, I'm Dave Bacon.
On today's show, we'll hit the court and meet a rising star and another player who's making a big comeback. Plus, we'll travel to Wayne County and meet Mr. Highlight, and we'll hear from a new head coach at a premier program.
We begin tonight with one of the best athletes in all of Ohio. Gilmore's CJ Charleston garnered national attention for his talents in track, football, and basketball. Charleston could be all-state in all three sports. In the classroom, Charleston is just as good, with a 3.7 grade point average with Gilmore's rigorous academics. We salute CJ Charleston, this week's Ohio Lottery Partners in Education Shining Star.
CJ Charleston is Gilmore's man for all seasons. A state champion in track last spring, the Division V Player of the Year in football this fall, and now a basketball four-year starter and guard that makes the Lancers offense go.
We're spreading the floor. We're going to get the ball to him and Connor and let them make decisions. What two better guys to do that with? And with what he had, 7 assists and 31 points. I mean, that's just incredible. It's tremendous. It goes back to his work ethic, too. I mean, playing three sports at that high of a level, it's not just natural ability. You have to put time into it, and he does that.
My jumper has improved a lot, and my bounce, my bounce has definitely improved. But, yeah, I think it just got better being a better leader because when I was very shy coming in, it's just different now. I'm a leader, so I just got to step up.
Charleston is playing with a great deal of confidence on the basketball court. He and the Lancers are on a roll. CJ has scored 30 points or more in 5 of Gilmore's last 6 games. Charleston is in basketball shape after Gilmore's deep playoff run in football. CJ has taken to the Lancers' new system under first-year head coach Dan DeCrane.
It's simple. I mean, I drive. I know I got Connor, Ian, Ryan, everybody out on the three-point line when everybody collapses. Then I know when to take it up myself.
Just his burst, his explosiveness, you can't keep him in front really, you know, and then he can make shots over you. You know, they're putting 6'4" to 6'6" guys on him, and he's making shots over them. He can really play at a high level in 3 sports. Special kid. I mean, he's going to lead us in all-time points in a couple games.
CJ was recognized nationally by Sports Illustrated as part of their Faces in the Crowd. He's an all-state caliber player in football, track, and basketball, and a coach's dream.
Leads by example, quiet, like he mentioned. Kind of reminds me of me, not player-wise, but from a personality-wise, just quiet, a little bit introverted, but not in a negative way. He's got the voice, and he's learning. It's just kind of opening up more and more. You know, after the Holy Name loss, which was tough for us, he spoke up a little bit, and I think those guys want to see, you know, him lead them, and they're willing to do so. And now, instead of just example, it's by voice, which is big for him.
CJ carries a 3.7 grade point average with challenging classes at Gilmore. Next year, he's headed to Youngstown State to play for the Penguins' nationally ranked football team.
I like the coaching staff there. You got Bo Pliny, NFL coach. I just like the environment there, and I feel like we have some great coming up in Youngstown.
If you know a student who deserves recognition like CJ, we want to hear about them. Log on to OhioLottery.com, head to the About section, find Supporting Education, and nominate that student as an academic all-star. They could end up on the High School Sports Insider as our next shining star.
Let's hit the mat for a changing of the guard at St. Edward. After 29 years, 24 state championships, 76 individual trophies, and 4 national titles, Greg Urbis stepped down in May. So, how do you replace a legend? Well, look at the guy that's been standing with him the entire time. In fact, with John Heffernan now running the show, not much has changed. Here's St. Edward's Wrestling, our team of the week. For the first time in almost 3 decades, go! There is a new head coach in the St. Ed's wrestling room, but John Heffernan is a familiar face and voice.
Let's go, 6 times. I've been a part of the program for 28 years as far as a coach, and as a wrestler 4 years before that, so I've been involved in the program, just kind of hopefully keep this thing going. You never want to follow a legend, but hopefully I can keep it going.
When the legendary Greg Urbis announced his retirement in May, it took about 60 seconds to name his successor.
We just had a meeting with the AD. It lasted about a minute. He walked in with me and he just said we're going to change positions, and the AD said okay, and that was basically it.
I didn't really even look at it as stepping down. John's been running the practices, teaching the technique since he came here in '92. I mean, he's tremendous. I'm not, you know, he's the one that's got all the experience. He's the one that has all the accomplishments. I'm learning from him.
Heffernan was named the National Assistant Coach of the Year last season. He won a state title for the Eagles in '84. His oldest brother, Brian, was the school's first state champion, and his older brother, Jim, won 2 state trophies.
It's not about the family legacy, it's about St. Ed's. And, you know, St. Ed's has done a lot for us as a family. A big part of this thing is, as I said before, creating opportunities for the kids.
Coach Heff is he's a master at always getting us to peak at the right moment. At the end of the season, we're always ready for March. That's our main goal.
He's running all the practices. They're pretty brutal at times, but when it's not time to practice, when we're not practicing, he's fun. He kind of lightens the mood, and he's a good guy.
So when you hear St. Edward has a new head coach this season, rest assured it will be business as usual.
Everybody says you can win something once, but when you win it twice, it proves it isn't a fluke. So, there's going to be people that say when I won my first, it was a fluke. So now it's time to just prove them wrong.
Me, Bryce Andonian, Bryce Hepner, Patty Gallagher, Angelo Rini, we're fighting each other every day. It just makes us better people. It makes us better wrestlers, and in the end, it's going to make us champions.
Heffernan was also a 2-time All-American at Iowa under Dan Gable. And by the way, Coach Urbas is still around. He's working with the freshmen and the JVs.
We're just getting things rolling on this week's show. When we return after the break, we will take a look at a player who has worked hard to overcome injuries, and we'll also take a look at a guy who has worked hard and made himself into a big-time Division I recruit. The High School Sports Insider will be right back.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The High School Sports Insider rolls along. Thanks for riding shotgun with us. John Hughley is hard to miss on the basketball court. A big physical presence at center for the Brush Arcs that has amazing quickness and agility for a big guy. Hughley has made himself into a Division I college prospect. He's approaching 20 scholarship offers, and he earned each and every one of them with a relentless work ethic. We salute John Hughley from Brush High School, our Spectrum News 1 Game Breaker.
At 6'6" and 260 pounds, John Hughley is hard to miss on the basketball court. But the way he shoots and is able to run and jump and move on the court is what has college scouts really excited.
I think it all starts with each year he's lost weight. He's committed to getting his body together. He's in the gym constantly. He's always texting or calling, can he get in the gym, can he get in the weight room? And that's a credit to all these guys have gotten better each year, including himself. So with the weight he's lost, he has more hops. He can run faster, he can seal, he can get around and play defense better. So credit to him, and all these guys are putting in the work.
The work has paid off big time for Hughley. He's only a junior and is ranked as the top big man in his class in Ohio, a top 5 college prospect in the state overall, and among the best in the country. His play in the low post is tough to stop.
I'll take a lot into it, because, once you're a good post player, they start doubling down, got shooters, and then Dre. I'll wait for a second because I know there'll always be a double team coming. Then I'll look out.
And then you're kind of kicking it out at the double. What if the double team is slow coming?
I'll go to work.
When Hughley goes to work on the offensive end, it's usually good for the Arcs, bad for the defense.
There isn't that many guys his size, and what he's been able to do now is he's thinking the game, he's maturing, he's adding to what the kids call his bag. Okay, he's got moves he can go to. He's also running the floor much harder. He's going and he's getting out of position rebounds, like going to a different space, cleaning it up for someone else.
The scariest part of Hughley's game, he's just really scratching the surface of how good he can be. John takes pride in being more than just a scorer.
It's a real good, like my coaches say, don't let nothing inside, so just try to go block everything. But if you don't block it, just wall up, go straight up. Running harder, rebounding, using more of my left hand a lot.
Hughley's development over the last 2 years has been dramatic. He has 17 scholarship offers, That number grows pretty much any time another scout sees him play.
I think the one thing that we're striving to do each day is take it one day at a time and also make sure that every day we develop. I mean, our goal is to be the #1 development program in Northeastern Ohio. We want everyone to get better each year.
We are halfway through January, and Lexi Pettit should be on the bench right now. The senior from Stowe tore up her right knee during the playoffs last season, and she was supposed to be out for an entire year. But knowing Pettit, that was never going to happen. In fact, Lexi might be small, but she is a fighter. And now she's our Cuyahoga Community College student athlete with a future. Cuyahoga Community College, where futures begin. Lexi Pettit is 5'2" and barely over 100 pounds, but she's always ready for battle.
I don't like to see a point guard that's better than me. That's really hard for me to see, so if I can't lose. I don't like to lose, and I don't like to see someone play over me. That's really hard if I don't get to play.
Pettit has been in Stowe's starting lineup since she was a freshman, but her junior season was cut short during the playoffs in February. Lexi twisted her knee while going for a loose ball.
Like, I knew right away because I heard a pop, but I was in such denial of it because it was like my biggest fear was to do that, and it happened that I just couldn't even accept that it was happening.
Doctors said she had torn both her ACL and MCL and that she would be out for a year. Lexi disagreed.
I don't like when somebody says I can't do something, and mostly when people doubt me is like the biggest thing. It's like when he said, no, you're not going to be able to do this, I said, well, yes, I am.
Her goal was to be back in time for her first practice of her senior season. Every day, she would go to rehab, shoot in the gym, run a mile, and shoot some more. In October, Lexi was cleared to play, a week early.
Got it.
Lexi came back in 7 months, and from the very first day she walked out on the floor, she was just as competitive and just as feisty as she ever was. And in fact, in some ways, even more.
Lexi is getting stronger every day, and her basketball career will continue at the next level. In December, Pettit gave a verbal commitment to Point Park University in Pittsburgh. Not to mention, she's a 3.9 student. So to make a long story short, don't bet against Alexandra Pettit.
I want to be the best at where I'm at, and I'm going to work so hard to do that, so I'm going to do everything I can. And I just have such a fight in me from so many different things. It's just become a personality trait of mine. From I work really hard in school, I work really hard in anything I do. That it's just adapted on the basketball court and made me better.
If you missed some of today's show or want to see past episodes, they're online and free. What a deal, I know. Head to citybeat-tv.com. That's citybeat-tv.com.
Still to come, we'll meet a player who has put up some big numbers while winning a state championship. And our Insider Classic is throwing in threes at a record pace. Stick around.
I've got a 4-year degree. I wasn't really able to find a job despite putting out over 100 applications, so I decided to go back to school. Tri-C really did change my life. After getting my degree from Tri-C, I'm working in the IT field. I work at a job I love. Life is good, thanks to Tri-C. My name is Josh Gatka, and I received my IT degree from Tri-C.
Thanks for hanging with us on this edition of the High School Sports Insider. Orville's Marquel Parks has been described as one of the most dynamic football players in the state. He lived up to that billing, helping Orville win the Division V state football championship. Parks scored a touchdown every way imaginable on the football field this season and totaled better than 55 for the year. The best part about Parks from Orville's perspective, he's just a sophomore. He'll be back for 2 more seasons. We have an all-access look at Orville's super soph, Marquel Parks.
He's one of the most dynamic football players in the state, a guy who affects the game in all facets. 5'9", 150-pound Marquel Parks is referred to by the papers in his hometown as Mr. Highlight because of his ability to break open games.
He has you hold your breath. Every time he gets you, you go, oh, what's happening?
And unfortunately for us, well, fortunately, I guess, when he doesn't score, you go, well, what happened there? Well, you know, why didn't he go? But he is as an elite athlete as I've been around. He makes people miss and does things that you just don't see every day. And I thought he was phenomenal with his patience tonight. They did as good a job as anybody making it tough on him.
I got speed, but as you see, I got type of moves, but I just try to set him up. So this is speed. Give it the speed. Everything just comes. It just happens. But mostly every time I touch the ball, I'm trying to score.
For the season, Parks scored 57 total touchdowns, including 3 in the state title game. When you do the math, Marquel accounted for 342 points on the year. He scored every way imaginable and pretty much never left the field.
When he's locked in on defense, he's probably as good a defensive player as we have. You don't want to punt it or kick it to him. He stole the ball from the quarterback and scored that way. He's returned a fumble, 2 interceptions, 2 kickoffs, 2 punts, and then his rushing and passing, and he threw a touchdown pass on top of all that. So, yeah, I've not seen a kid more gifted football-wise than Marquel.
DeVault has been coaching a long time. He realizes that Marquel Parks is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of talent. And the best part of it all, Marquel is just a sophomore.
Like you said, I've been coaching for 33 years, and I've never seen anybody like Marquel. His ability to change direction and get back to speed and make you miss is phenomenal. It's Barry Sanders-like. It's the best comparison I can give you, and I'm not too sure it's not better than what he could do. Now it's just going to be a matter of he's only a sophomore. You know, what's next? You know, what is he going to do next?
It's time to go back in time for this week's Insider Classic. And this time around, we're going to the home of Pete the Penguin. Allison Smolinski has made history from behind the arc at Youngstown State. Smolinski just became the Penguins' all-time leader in three-pointers. And a 4-year starter, Allison has been a premier shooter in the Horizon League as well. We met her when she was breaking records at North Royalton. Let's go back to 2015 as Allison Smolinski becomes an Insider Classic. As a basketball star, Allison Smolinski has a lot of fans, but Cedric is the biggest.
Yeah, well, maybe horseback riding is good.
He is one of the many special needs students Allison visits with every morning. Smolinski is pretty busy, but she still volunteers her time to just hang out.
I do have study hall first period, but I choose to go in and work with them because honestly it just wakes me up and it just puts me in a good mood the whole day. It's awesome working with them.
Smolinski is also preparing for her future. The North Royalton senior wants to be a special ed teacher, and so far she's a natural.
But she goes out of her way to make the kids feel special. They feel like they're her friend rather than her being above them. She's just a really good peer for the kids that I work with.
Like Mrs. Mann said, you don't have to be completely book smart, but you just have to have passion about it, and I believe I have that.
Smolinski shows the same dedication in school. She's a very good student and pretty artistic too. You can see her work every time North Royalton takes to the court. Allison designed the logo the Bears use on their warm-ups, which leads us to her true passion, basketball, where you can see her all over the court.
Defensively, she's our leading defender. She has the most steals on the team. She has the most assists right now. She's one of the top rebounders, and obviously scoring is a huge asset. But she's very determined, very competitive, and that shines through when she plays.
As a 4-year starter, Smolinski has helped the program rise to the top while improving her game too.
Obviously, she's developed a ton, but I think mentally has been her biggest strive. You know, she misses the first couple shots. She gets back in there and hits the next couple.
Speaking of hits, Smolinski also owns a couple of school records in softball too. But her ultimate dream was to earn a Division I scholarship in basketball, and Allison is signed on with Youngstown State. She will major in special ed and continue to excel in everything she does, using the same game plan and earning more fans.
Hard work, when you do it at one thing, it reflects on everything and it'll just carry on.
We want you to get more involved in the show, and you can through social media. Follow us on Twitter. We're at HS Sports Insider or at Dave Bacon Sports. Tweet us your story ideas or your video or pictures showing your school spirit. we'll use them in a future show. We're still plugging away on Facebook as well. Head to our page and like us. We're at High School Sports Insider.
You love them. You need them. They are the tweets of the week, and they're coming up next.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I dare you. I dare you to change the world.
I dare you to be somebody important.
Like be a teacher. I dare you to stand up here. To call the shots.
To be a role model.
An inspiration. An innovator.
To be a teacher. I dare you.
Welcome back inside the High School Sports Insider. We've come to that part of the show where we ask for your help. You know we're always on the lookout for crazy plays, outstanding performances, or high school kids just being themselves. That's where you come in. When you see that happening, you have to let us know about it. There are a few rules. You have to use 280 characters or less. Video or pictures are even better. It's time for the tweets of the week.
St. Paris Graham alum David Taylor continues to impress. He was named as the best pound-for-pound freestyle wrestler in the world. Congrats to Cleveland Heights alums Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce, both named to the NFL All-Pro team again. And Buckeye Valley student section already in tournament mode. Take a look at the student section's roller coaster simulation.
Keep those tweets coming. We want your story ideas or pictures or video showing your school spirit. Tweet those to us. We're at HS Sports Insider or at Dave Bacon Sports. Use hashtag HSSI Ohio. Again, that's at HS Sports Insider or at Dave Bacon Sports. Use hashtag HSSI Ohio. We'll use a few of them on upcoming shows as the tweets of the week. Our half hour together has come to an end for another week, but fear not, we'll be back here next week, same time, same place, when again we'll spotlight some of the best high school sports stories from all across Ohio.
Thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting high school athletics. Have a great night.